Now in this video, we shall be working on the front section. Now between the last and this, I've gone ahead and renamed our layers. So let's head over to Bridge and let's open up image 5132. So this looks like a good image that we can use to build our front section. Now using a lasso tool, let me make a rough selection around it. Hit Ctrl J on the keyboard to duplicate, and let's drag that into our matte painting. Position it between the midground and the foreground into its own layer, set that to normal, and I'm going to call it the barrier. Turning on my black and white global, let's transform the barrier into position. Zoom back in, move it down. Let's position so we are getting an interesting part to look at. Maybe stretch it a bit. Alright, so I'm going to add a layer mask to it using a brush tool and going over to the chalk brush. Let's start painting into the mask. Turning off the other layers which we don't need at the moment. Let's try to define a good shape for this. Let's get in a bit closer. Alright, so just trying to follow a few of the rocks and snow that I'm observing in this image. Now we don't want it to be too tall because our sci-fi base is going to be on top of it. Again, switching between the black and white colors to reveal and hide. Continuing to paint on the middle section. Now this gully, which is from the picture, is really good, and it's adding an interesting composition to our image. So let's keep that in. Let me take that down. And we don't need this upper section, so let me just paint that out. Just a little bit left to do, and here we go. We just fine tweak it here. Just a little bit more here. So selecting the layer, I'm just going to squash it down just slightly. Going back to the mask, let me just reveal it back from the left side so it has more of the similar flow coming from the mountain onto the left foreground plate. Now this image has lighting pretty similar to what we have in our matte painting, so that's going to help us a lot. Working on a similar integration with the right hand side as well. Turning off my black and white, you can see that the images are quite close. They're not perfectly matching, but they are roundabout close with each other. So adding a brightness contrast layer, push the contrast up. If you observe how the contrast for the left foreground plate is, we need to be pretty close to it. Duplicate this layer, take it up on top. Let me apply the layer mask. Add a curves layer. And let's start to bring in some high contrast values in. Going into the red channel. Adding a little bit of red to the highlights. Similarly, adding a bit of yellow in the blue channel. Back to the RGB. And adjusting for our light layer set here. Like similarly to midground and background, we are building a light layer set for our barrier. Again, adjusting my yellows in the blue channel, adding a layer mask to the light layer, and using a soft round brush, I'm just going to reveal sections where I want the light to hit. I do have my pressure sensitivity turned on for this brush. And again, since it's on its own layer and it has its own adjustment layers, we can come back and tweak, adjust any of them later on. Next, let's go over to the foreground section. Choose the right element. And let me bring in an image which is shot at the same location. Choose a layer and let's start to extract it out. Now our foreground section over there, that is what is in the plate, already has a lot of lighting into it. So we are going to use this section from another image and try and replace that with it. So using techniques similar to what we did before when it comes to extraction. Let me fill that up with black and fill the rest up with white. Let me add a little bit of area where the trees meet the snow. And using a lasso tool, let me select everything else. And let's quickly fill that up with white. Invert it. Select it. Let's bring in our refine edge. Little bit of smart radius, decontaminate colors, and let's pull that into our matte painting. Of course, apply the layer mask as well. Let's position it into place. Let's go to matting and defringe, and in defringe, let's use a value of 1. Sorry, that went out of your screen. Adding the curves on top of it. Let me adjust the overall values. That is, push the blacks up slightly, push the mids up just a little bit, dock my palette back in. Of course, make sure to rename our layers here. Let's go back into our curves, into our blue. Now in the shadows, the values of blue and cyan should be similar to what we have in the plate that is on the left side established so far. And in the highlights, we want to make them slightly warmer. So here we are, our barrier is looking quite decent. It's in the ballpark. So in the next video, let's go ahead and start on with some overall integration. That is, bring all the elements closer with each other.